Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're taking a truly fascinating journey back in time. We're dropping right into the autumn of 1788 to examine the bustling, nonstop domestic enterprise of the Spangler family. You know, you can go ahead and forget about those quiet, dusty portraits of early America you might have seen in museums. We are about to look at a living, breathing household that operated like a finely tuned machine. Okay, let's dive into this. Just imagine the sheer logistical challenge of early American domestic life for a second. How do you feed, clothe, educate, and manage 12 people under one roof without modern electricity, running water, or grocery stores? It required this incredible system of organization, discipline, and communal effort that is absolutely captivating to break down.
So the year is 1788. This is a huge, pivotal post-revolutionary moment, and we're catching the heads of this household, Rudolf and Dorothea Spangler, right at the prime of their lives. Rudolf is 50 and Dorothea is 40. They aren't in their elder statesman years just yet, right? They are right in the thick of raising a massive family and building a lasting legacy.
And this perfectly illustrates the setting they were operating in. The Spanglers weren't living out in some frontier backwater. York was a rapidly maturing town fresh off its prominent role in the American Revolution. I mean, this is the very place where the Continental Congress had met and adopted the Articles of Confederation. By the autumn of 1788, York had literally just been incorporated as a borough, and the York County Academy had been chartered. The town was booming. Moving into Section 1, inside the Spangler home, the rhythm of the household. Let's shift our focus from the macro view of York right into the physical house on West Market Street. 12. That is the staggering number of people living in this two-story brick house. You have Rudolf, Dorothea, and their 10 children. The oldest is 21-year-old Jacob, a fully grown man, and the youngest is 2-year-old Peter, who was, just getting unsteady on his feet and constantly underfoot. It was a lively, crowded, and thoroughly noisy reality. And think about this. All 12 of those mouths had to be fed 2 or 3 times a day at a long wooden table. The menu was classic Pennsylvania German. Just imagine the rich sensory smells filling that house. Mouth-watering sauerkraut, root vegetables put up from the garden, dried and salted meats, and fresh rye and wheat bread. Plus, whatever wild game Rudolph and his older sons brought in from the woods. This hearty fare was prepared over a hot, open hearth by Dorothea and her older daughters, Catherine, Elizabeth, and Margaret. Throughout the week, the household spoke a blend of languages, German for home, prayer, and scolding, and English for business. But it was Sundays that truly organized the week and drastically slowed down their relentless pace. Sunday brought a strict halt to the week's labor. It was a day of rest, worship at the German Reformed congregation, and family visiting. Absolutely no needless labor was allowed, and you can bet that was a rule Dorothea enforced without debate. Now for Section 2, the family as an enterprise. Work and chores. To really understand a colonial family, you have to realize they functioned as a complex domestic and commercial business. The division of labor here was intense. Let's start with the patriarch. Rudolf Spangler was a true dual-threat tradesman. At the bench, he was a highly skilled silversmith and clockmaker, which, as you can guess, required immense patience and a very steady hand. But he was also a shrewd merchant, managing a complex web of property and goods across York. And you'd likely find his 21-year-old son Jacob working right there beside him in the shop, learning the trade exactly as Rudolf had learned it. Then there is the mother figure, Dorothea. She was remembered by those who knew her as having a happy temperament of mind. And this capable grace is just astounding when you consider her reality. In 1788, she was 40 years old, managing the preservation of food for the winter, spinning, sewing, and she was actually likely experiencing her 11th pregnancy. She maintained this amazing, capable grace late into her widowhood. To put it in modern terms, Dorothea Spangler was basically the chief executive of a small domestic enterprise. Her labor was unceasing. She brilliantly directed her daughters and managed the massive household survival, orchestrating everything from smoking meat to drying fruit. She kept the entire machine running. And she delegated incredibly efficiently. The labor was relentlessly hierarchical. The older girls, Catherine, Elizabeth, and Margaret, were practically co-managers, doing cooking, spinning, sewing, gardening, and childcare. The middle children, from 9 to 13, handled the heavy physical labor, like tending livestock, hauling wood and water, and running errands. Even the tiny 5- and 7-year-olds gathered eggs, carried kindling, and ran simple errands. Literally everyone in the house, except for 2-year-old Peter, had a crucial job to do.
Let's move to Section 3, Minds and Souls, Education and Faith, and see how this builds. We'll look at how the Spangler children were prepared for the outside world, both mentally and spiritually.
So, education followed 2 distinct tracks based on gender. Well, actually, basic literacy was crucial and highly prized for both, but the paths diverged from there. The boys might get a classical schooling at the New York County Academy for Latin and Math, but they heavily focused on practical, skilled trade apprenticeships. The girls, on the other hand, focused on intensive household management and needlework. But here is what's key. The German Reformed community demanded strong female religious literacy so girls could read scripture. And this wasn't just basic education. It was highly effective. In fact, Dorothea Spangler herself proved this by writing her final will entirely in her own hand in German at the age of 86.
Moving on to Section 4, Civic Life in York, Beyond the Home. Let's zoom back out into the broader community to examine Rudolph's civic duties and the family's social safety net.
The absolute anchor of their community was the German Reformed Church. This was far, far more than just a place to sit on Sunday mornings. It was their social safety net. It managed a school, oversaw charity for the poor and widowed, and recorded all vital events like births, marriages, and deaths. Really, it was the social forum that bound York's founding families together through generations of intermarriage. Families like the Spanglers, the Dinkels, and the Eichelbergers. Rudolph's standing in the community was also cemented by his military background. He was a veteran of the Flying Camp, which was a Revolutionary War militia unit where he actually marched as a captain. Because of this respected veteran status, Rudolf was heavily involved in shaping York's new borough government. He was always participating in militia musters, serving on juries, and taking on tax assessments. He was a true civic leader.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Colonial Pennsylvania Pastimes, Joy and Community. Let's slow things down a bit, because life in 1788 wasn't purely relentless labor and solemn worship. They definitely knew how to let off steam.
Seasonal gatherings were a huge source of joy, and they clearly combined work with play. Autumn brought corn huskings with neighbors, where communal labor turned into parties with feasting, singing, and a chance for the older children to court. Barn raisings and house raisings were rewarded hard physical work with massive neighborhood feasts. Then you had fairs and traveling merchants. And the holidays were incredibly special. In fact, early forms of the Christmas tree and the Belsnickel tradition, which was a crotchety, fur-clad precursor to Santa, were already taking root in these Pennsylvania German communities.
Everyday amusements, though, were much more intimate. Entertainment in 1788 was way less about grand spectacles and much more about the warmth of company and tradition. Long winter evenings were spent singing German hymns from memory around the hearth or listening to ghost stories and Rudolph's war tales. The kids played simple games like marbles, hoops, and cards. The men hunted and fished in the local woods. And of course, Sundays were filled with extended visits among a massive network of cousins and in-laws. So the crucial point is this. The Spangler home in 1788 was a household in full flower. It was a family defined by constant, organized work, deeply rooted in their German Reformed faith. They survived and thrived by passing down traded skills from father to son and mother to daughter, and they sustained themselves through the simple, communal pleasures that kept their family bonds incredibly strong. Which brings us to a close. When we strip away the myth of the past, this idea that it was just a simpler, slower time, and really look at the bustling, relentless, yet deeply connected reality of a 1788 domestic enterprise, how does it change how you view your own family's history? Think about the logistics, the love, and the labor of the Spanglers, and keep exploring the incredible realities of early American life. Until next time.